Hello guys, want to make a updated video on the 3D Safer Barrier process. Part of the process was a little bit hard to understand from the other videos, and that is after you've got your objects laid out in max on your shape or string object, how do you get that into Sandbox and ultimately into the game efficiently? This is the way that I figured out how to do it. What you're looking at is Daytona, which is 2.5 miles. That's 1,536 foam blocks. Just to show you, I'll zoom in over here. So I'm just drag selecting it and hitting Z to zoom in. So it's the exact same foam block that's at Texas, the current release for 2015. And you can see those are individual foam blocks. That was a lot of work. How to get to that point is discussed in some other videos on this channel. What I did to get to this point is I actually started over in this area. Same thing, drag select Z to zoom to extents. You end up with a string of individual foam blocks, so each one of those would be an individual object by itself. I started in a kind of a random place over here on the exit of the tri-oval. You can see there's the tri-oval. Pit road would be in this area right here. Basically just started right there and just drag select 33 foam blocks. Once I have, we chose 33 as the number because it gives you room as far as how many polygons will end up being in each individual object string. And what I mean by that is if you end up having to have a tapered safer barrier where it ends over here and there's no more foam blocks after that, or if you're doing an older version, most of the cup tracks will probably have safer barrier all the way around here in the next year to year and a half. By the end of 2017 they should all have safer barrier all the way around them. So if you're doing that tapered method, you're going to have Boolean cutting, which is described in some of the other videos as well. So that's going to increase your polygon count. Honestly, if you're doing an entire loop like this, you could probably double the amount of polygons or objects in each string. So probably around 60 or 66. You can probably double it, to be honest with you. I decided to keep it 33 to keep it consistent. Total I ended up with 50 objects. Hopefully you can see that over here. There's 50 objects going around Daytona there. So what I'll do is I'll zoom back in here. 33 foam blocks starting at whatever point you want to start at. After those are drag selected, you go over here to hammer, collapse selected, and that would convert those individual foam blocks into a single mesh. Next thing you want to do with each one of those is go to the hierarchy tab up here, click effect pivot only, and center that to the object. So now that axis point is right on the center of that bounding box. Once you go around the entire string, copying each set of 33 or whatever one, however many number you want to end up using, you want to name using a naming convention. In this case, we started with star block tri-oval 2A, 2B, 2C, all the way until you get to turn 1. It should be right there, so it changes to star block T1, turn 1, A, B, C, until you get to turn 2, and then it changes to T2, A. You can, if you're doing an entire loop, you can name it, you know, A, B, C, D, Obviously, there's only 26 letters in the English alphabet, so it's up to you, however you want to name it. Seems like it was easier to figure out placing the objects in Sandbox if you labeled it in this naming convention. Helps you kind of keep track of it. Each one of those objects you want to copy the X, Y, and Z. Now the X, Y, and Z in Max is exactly the same as the X, Y, Z in Sandbox. So you can see that all these are in one scene right now. So I've got 2A, so I've got a text file over here. You can see I've got each one of those objects with the X, Y, and Z. So with it highlighted, if I go up here to in Max, if I go to select and move, I've got the X, Y, and Z down here at the bottom. So I've got the X, Y, and Z laid out for each one of these 50 objects. Obviously I've not gotten that far on it yet, but so I'm working over here on turn 2A is where I've stopped getting the X, Y, Z. How do I get from this point to getting each one of these individualized and into Sandbox? So what I would do is take, let's see, so this would be the first one that I'm working on over here, which would be T1D. So I'm going to hit Z on the keyboard to zoom to extents. Control R to rotate around it. So this is the one that I want to work on. So I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to hit hide selection. After I do that, I'm going to zoom back out. I'm going to select all the other ones. I'm going to hit delete on the keyboard, which deletes everything in the scene. I'm going to unhide all. I'm going to drag select, and now that is the only thing that is in the scene. So again, I've got, that is T1D, which is this one here. If you look at the X, Y, and Z, matches up, same as down here. So put that off screen there. Then I want to take and move this to 0, 0 in the scene. So drag select, Z to zoom to extents, that centers me on 0, 0. Next I want to copy that, and I want to save this as its own scene. I've already done that, so I'm just overwriting the one that's there. Then I want to export it as a 3ds file, same name as .3ds, which I've already done. Ignore the fact that it's renaming the textures, that's fine. You're going to reapply the textures in Max 7 or whichever older version of Max that you're going to use for PAS or PAS exporting. So we're done in this version of Max. I just prefer working in Max 13. It creates extra steps. If you're working in the older version of Max, then you don't have to do all those extra steps of exporting because it's already in there, obviously. So I'm going to switch over to 3ds Max 7, and I've already got this in here. Let me reset it. Let me import that 3ds that we just made. Completely replace the current scene. Do not convert the units because your Max should already be set up. I'm going to retry with that error. I'll maximize that viewport by clicking down here. Now notice that after running it through the 3ds exporter, it has eliminated or cut off our name for the object. So the first thing I'm going to do is paste in that and rename it. I'm going to hit M on the keyboard. Go to diffuse, bitmap. I'm going to reapply the texture. So then I'm going to hit this button here, which is show material and viewport. I'll drag that over to the object, make sure the object's visible there. So we're down there. You can see the texture's been reapplied. Make sure that that's copied. We're going to save as a 3ds Max 7 scene, which is already there. I'm just going to overwrite it. We're going to export that into a PAPI PAS export. I'll do that on the desktop. Exen, same name. It was already there, so I just overwrote it. Then what I'm going to do is go over to my Make 3DO folder, which there's already some in there. I'm going to delete those. I'm going to take the one we just exported. I'm going to put it in there. You can't see it on the camera, but I'm just typing CMD into the search on the start menu. And the command prompt comes up. So we're going to type cd backslash make 3DO. So now that command prompt is in the Make 3DO folder. So we're going to type make 3DO, that's O, not 0, space dash P, move the mouse so you can see there, space styro underscore block underscore t1d.pas, and make sure I spell everything correctly, and I'm just going to hit enter, and you can see up here in the folder it created the 3DO for me. So what I'm going to do is copy that. We go over to Papyrus. This is my working folder. Ignore all this mess. It was this folder here, so I'm going to paste that in there. So you can now see that we have that new object. I've already got the texture in there. I'm going to close the command prompt. I'm going to open Sandbox. And I'm going to open the track there. And that is Daytona, this one. Alright, so give me just a second here. Here is the camera view. You can see I've already got some of the foam blocks in there. Something that I'm noticing on Daytona is probably due to the higher banking than most of the other tracks. Is you'll notice that this concrete wall had to be raised significantly. Let me zoom in here. So let's look at the properties of that wall. So I've got the width, both physical and visual, set to 0.20, which is roughly 8 inches. And the reason for that, I want to go over that just a little bit there, because I see a lot of people starting to copy this procedure without paying any attention to the measurements. That steel wall right there is made up of 5 8-inch by 8-inch steel tubes stacked on top of each other. So that means they're 40 inches tall. So again, if we look at the properties over here, 1.02 is roughly 40 inches tall. It's close enough. I don't think it lets you go any farther into detail there. So it's roughly 40 inches tall and 8 inches thick. So that is exactly the same size as the steel wall that's at all of the NASCAR tracks. This foam block object is 30 inches deep, and the height of the foam is going to vary, but it's slightly less than that steel wall. The concrete wall is probably going to have to be changed on a lot of tracks, but you're just going to have to go by pictures, knowing the height of this and the height of the foam. The concrete wall should just look right based on photographs and video. In this case, I have not adjusted the fence. This track may not see the light of day. I just wanted to get Daytona done. These foam blocks will work for all versions of Daytona that have not had any X section or walls moved. This just happens to be the current release of SPP Daytona. One drawback that I'm noticing on this version of Daytona, which is the Papyrus track originally, is once you get into this pretty steep banking over here, you start noticing, now let's get into this area right here, the foam block is actually protruding above the steel wall, even though that steel wall is 40 inches tall. I think that's due to the way Sandbox interprets the track. It does seem to protrude above in-game as well. The density of the track mesh in Sandbox is not going to be the same density as the mesh in the game. The game is going to draw it at 100%. Sandbox is usually 80 to 90% mesh density. So if your track has extreme banking, you may need to increase the height of the walls just to get the same visual impact that you do on the straightaways, or you may have to lower the height of the foam, or possibly both as well. The way that I laid it out was I installed the steel wall, got all the textures on it set up correctly, both sides obviously. And we should be able to go ahead and apply the foam block that we just exported. So let's give this a try here. And it should be right in this area. So we got an object. And that was turn 1D. And let's go to object properties, fixed. Turn 1D, yep. So I should be able to simply copy the X, Y, and Z I'm just copying and pasting the X, Y, and Z there. And let's go back to camera view. You can see how it's recessed into the concrete wall. That part will not be the same in Sandbox as in the game. So if you load this up in the game, that is not a problem. As far as protruding into the wall towards the catch fence, that part usually isn't a problem because of the breathing issue. The height, however, does seem to carry over. So in this case, I would have to either lower the top of the foam or raise the height of the wall. And you would have to check all that in game, not necessarily in Sandbox here. The other thing is the way that I laid out that steel wall is I had it pretty far away. Let me unhighlight that and go back to geometry. So let's place the wall in this location. Because of the way that breathes, I would untie the tail of that wall, and I would set up the camera view, and I'm going to have to do this off camera here, so let's see if I can set this up to where you guys can see it. So I'm basically going to come over here to the last foam block that wall lines up on, and I want to set this. I don't want to look at it in the middle of a segment, and what I mean by that is I don't want to pay attention, especially on a large segment like this, I don't want to pay attention to how it lines up over here, because this is probably not accurate. These endpoints are the control points, so there's going to be more accuracy in that segment over here than there is in the middle of it. So I'm looking at this area while I move this line over. Basically just want to bring that over until it just barely clips that top edge. I don't really care about the bottom, it's more the top edge that I'm worried about. Again, this is probably not how it's going to look in game, so I'm not super concerned about that being recessed into the wall like that. So then I would set the endpoint, and then I would bring the next segment wall back over to it and just let it snap right to it. And then I would continue on going around the track just like that. So hopefully that helps you go from Max to Sandbox a little bit easier. Like I said, that looks terrible in Sandbox, and it may look terrible in game, but definitely look at it in game before you start freaking out and changing things in Sandbox or in Max. Look at it in game to see what you need to do. Other than that, hopefully that helps you out, and have a good one. Thanks.